All right, guys, welcome to Cinema Sit Down here. My name's Nick DiStefano. I'm going to be the host today for this Cinema Sit Down. So we just watched a movie, Tombstone. It's basically, the setting took place in Tombstone, Arizona, where these guys, try to lollygag a little bit and try to start their own business, but then things later get into trouble. They don't want any trouble, but then things get into trouble with the ruthless cowboy gang. So it's a Western / action-packed film, and it was produced in 1993. So first, before we get into analysis of this film, let me introduce my guests here. First of all, to my left.
What's up? I'm Brendan Barnes, and we got to watch some Cowboys.
And then to my right.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Paris Norvell. Glad to be back. And I love Cowboys, so what can I say? Really excited to get into it.
Yeah, so the theme of this film's a little bit different than our past ones. This is a little bit of action-packed Western film, as I said, cowboy-themed, if you will. It's a little bit of an older film, too, as I mentioned, 1993. So, what'd you guys think overall of this film?
It's good. I enjoyed Tombstone. I've seen it previously. A lot of great acting in this film, and I think that's really what carries it. The story is pretty simple, but since it's acted so well, it really carries it. I mean, there's Sam Elliott. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I would say, this was my first time watching it. I'd never seen Tombstone before. So it definitely gets my approval. I love a lot of the shots that they use, especially, them riding with the sunset. You can't get much better than that.
That nice
So,
silhouette.
Yeah. I love the kind of the colors that they use. I love the Southwest kind of palette that they have, the really warm orange tones. And I just thought that was great. Like I said, the shot of them running off on their horses at the sunset. That's just classic cowboys having fun. So I love that part. So.
Yeah, one thing that kind of, and I don't know if you guys thought this as too much of an issue, but one thing that I kind of saw in this film was the amount of gore and violence that there was. Did you guys think that was an issue at all, too much, or what did you think overall in some of those scenes?
In and of itself, I think that there was enough gore. I don't think that there should have been more gore. But if there would have been less, I wouldn't have probably noticed. It didn't affect me, the gore didn't affect me in a way that may have affected you, especially coming from a time when Pulp Fiction was coming out, and a lot of those early, more aggressive and darker movies definitely stepped that kind of scene up a little bit. This one still seemed more tame in that aspect, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think that the kind of violence and gore added a nice realism to it, and also kind of kept you grounded in the world of the wild, wild west, where anything can happen. People are getting shot left and right. People are dying, and they clearly don't have a very strong sense of the sanctity of kind of life. They're just they're able to just kill and shoot, and it's the Wild West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that first death where he gets shot and it splatters and rubs against the wall, and that looks straight up strawberries.
Yeah.
It just made me want some strawberries, to be honest.
Yeah, this Western, it's weird because I didn't watch a bunch of Westerns. I've seen this movie before, it's been a while, but it kind of brings me back to some John Wayne movies
True Grit.
Yeah, True Grit was one of them.
Classic.
Can't think off the top of my head, but yeah, it just seems like these Westerns add a really nice feel and stuff, especially with the music that's used, and even some of the cinematography that's used in there too. What were your guys' thoughts on some of those elements?
Yeah, you mentioned the music. I think the music was really good. I really enjoyed the scene where they were in the theater and they had the I can't remember the piece. I know the English translation of it is just the Dance of the Dead, but it's a piece. It's great piece. So I really enjoyed them throwing that in there, and just the overall music. I feel always fit the tone, and I think was a good addition.
I actually liked that they were kind of sparse with their music, and they
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like it made when the music played really stand out, and it was all really well done in its composition, and it always fit right where it needed to be, and I really liked the sound design in this movie in terms of that. It's like they kind
Yeah.
of knew exactly where it needed to be silent, and exactly when the music needed to play.
Yeah, just like the whole atmosphere of the sound design mixed with the music, and yeah, like you said, knowing when to play and when to just kind of let the world speak for itself and let the atmosphere speak for itself.
Like whenever like an important gunshot rang out, and there was just silence before, and then the guns went off, and that's it. Really carries a scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, westerns are very action-packed, and I think like some of these scenes really carried out. It's just good stuff, and it really shows like the true action and stuff in the movie. Compared to like some of the other films that we've watched, like would you guys say like this one was your best overall, or like I know it's been a while, you guys may have to think a little bit, but like overall, what are your thoughts on like the film, like best films overall?
Like how it ranks up against
that
the
we've
other
seen,
films?
like, in the previous
just some
cinema
rankings.
sit-downs.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely up there. I enjoyed it. I'm not like overall. I would just say it was a great film. I haven't seen a ton of westerns, so the few westerns that I have seen, I mean, it was definitely better than those ones. So I like the pacing of the story as well. I think is another really crucial aspect that makes the movie work the way that it does, is how the story kind of paces, because you get around the first kind of climax area where they go and decide they're going to kill the cowboys for having guns. You kind of think like, wow, that's like kind of the climax. But then we get a bit of a dip, and it just keeps going into kind of the repercussions of those actions, and seeing that kind of the repercussions of their revenge, and the kind of the thematic tones of that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I will say, like, at some points it seems very, like, it kind of breaks up that standard structured style of Act 1, Act 2, Act 3.
Yeah.
And it flows together in a way that really lends itself to the film. There's a huge cast in this. And because of that, they kind of had to, like, make some parts more drawn out, because you have to connect with these characters. You have to understand them. It was like not only the main cast, but their wives. You have to understand what's going on with that. And like they kind of only touch on a lot of that, like very briefly in scenes. But there's so much depth within each scene that it really lends itself to some great storytelling.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, what do you guys thought about the overall storytelling? I mean, it doesn't seem like it was too confusing of a story to follow, compared to like some other movies that we've seen. But like overall, like, what do you guys think about that, and just describe your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that towards the beginning, like I had mentioned, I'd never seen the film before. So towards the beginning, I think the kind of like the whole first part was a little slow, and it was kind of hard to connect the dots of where it's trying to go in terms of the story, because they're introducing all these characters. It's clear that Wyatt is kind of the main guy. You're not really sure why, but once it kind of gets through that first kind of introductory and like kind of the rising action, you really start to understand the characters and the plot points and why everything is happening. Then it basically just takes off from there, and yeah, you're in for the ride.
Yeah, I mean, the storytelling in and of itself was fantastic. I will agree that it was a little slow, but it had to be to kind of introduce you to this world of the characters and Tombstone, which is more of almost a lawless town at that point. They had a sheriff, and then the county sheriff, but they didn't really do anything. Like, they just kind of let bad stuff happen. Like, there's so much gambling, drinking, partying. It's essentially like what we would consider Vegas now, except way more bloodshed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of one thing I got from the movie. It seems like all this fighting and stuff that's going on, or like partying or whatnot, it really like serves like a good like climax in Western films. Like you have like, you know, these guys, like I said in the beginning, you know, they're just trying to, you know, do their own thing and, you know, really try to get to this town in Tombstone, and, you know, they want to do it with minimal problems, and then they run into problems. You know, you got bad guys, and then that's when the gunshots go up, and, you know, the horses are going to freak out and stuff a little bit because they're not susceptible to hearing those gunshots. So yeah, it really serves a good role in the film overall. I mean, I at least thought. So do you guys have any more desire of like, because like I know, you know, there's certain genres of movies that people prefer and stuff, and, you know, I feel like Western, maybe a little bit of action-packed movies, or more like those old-time, older generation type movies. But like, are you guys inspired more to watch like any Western films now after seeing this?
I would definitely say so. Like, as I mentioned, I haven't seen a ton of Westerns, so I feel like this definitely inspired me to see more. I really would like just to see more movies that are set in the Southwest in general now, just because I love those really warm tones, and, you know, just the kind of whole atmosphere that it kind of set up. Really, I definitely think inspired me to watch more films, at least that take place in the same kind of setting.
Yeah. I definitely, I'm no stranger to Westerns. Growing up, my grandfather and I used to watch Westerns to death, or Westerns, so much so that, like, he was deaf, so we would always watch them silent and with subtitles. And I think that also adds another layer of depth. It's just like, Westerns, there's so much action on screen, not only with like gunfights and stuff like that, but characters' movements, the way they look, that's so important, because if you remember the first essentially shoot off, it's all comes down to like they were just staring each other down, and it's who they think is going to pull the trigger first. And unfortunately, it led to kind of a bloodbath.
Yeah, you know, it seems like really fast paced too, because like if you see like something going on in a Western, it can happen like instantly, and like sometimes you don't even miss it, or you don't even witness it, you miss it. So yeah, I think overall too, like it seems like the imagery really stood out in this film. Like it, you know, it wasn't all like one place or one time in the day. You know, it definitely seemed different.
Varied its shots a lot. I think the pacing of it is really good, because like we said, it was a little slow in the beginning, but so were like the cuts and like how long it takes. And then the more action we saw, the faster each scene would go, and like the faster like we would get to the resolution of the scene. But in terms of like the way the shots were set up, like there's the scene right after his brother dies, and he's just this huge wide shot of him standing in town holding essentially just rain, and like he's just like, leave me alone, and it's like it's supposed to isolate him in this huge town, and it does a fantastic job.
Yeah, I did have a question though, because I didn't really understand when it was towards the beginning when that one guy, one of the cowboys who was like kind of the main one who had the red shirt on, why did he just start shooting everyone in the middle of the night?
Oh, dude, he was high on opium.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He was in an opium den.
Yeah, I could tell something was like he was off something about it. I didn't really catch what happened there.
Yeah, that's something else too that I forgot to mention. Yeah, that some of these characters, you know, they were kind of on, you know, another planet, if they will, and, you know, I think he, because of what Brendan said, yeah, he definitely had that power and motive to really do that. But yeah, you were going to elaborate too.
Like that's actually, opium's a really big was a really big problem during that time, and they didn't say outright, and it's just like opium is bad, but it's just like they underlaid it inside the story because his wife had an opium problems, because that's what she was taking for her headaches. The opium dens were a huge problem, and then there was the montage of them murdering all the cowboys, and there was those two cowboys in the opium den, and like they were so spaced that he tried to drink the barrel of his gun, and Wyatt just let him have it.
You know, I know this is a rated R movie and stuff, but would you guys have like desires of showing it to like younger generations, or like what do you think about that?
Are you asking me the educational value of Tombstone?
Yes and no, but yeah, I just for some comedy.
I mean, I saw the movie when I was fairly young. the movie came out when I was 3, but I ended up seeing it when I was like 7. So it was like stuff that didn't affect me the way like it affected some people, I guess, because it didn't like bother me in the slightest. Sure. But in this day and age, probably not. I'd probably, that might just because I'm older and I just may be trying to hide more stuff that I think maybe shouldn't be seen by kids. But if they see it, it didn't negatively impact me. So.
Yeah, I just wonder because, we think of like all these times, oh, like what can we show to people and stuff. And I feel like, definitely when we were like younger and stuff, people had this mindset of, oh, like you have to be a certain age to watch this movie. But I guess it depends on like the scenes and stuff. Obviously there's a little bit of violence and gore in this movie, but I feel like, it might be suitable for others to watch, as long as it's like, there weren't really any, too lewd of scenes.
No. I will say that one thing this movie does really well is it doesn't glorify the violence. Like they all get hurt. It's not like the hero stands tall. Like they all end up pretty much dying except for, Wyatt not getting hurt, but that's because Doc ends up taking his place during that shootout.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point I think you made about how the film doesn't glorify violence, because I started thinking about like how even though it was gory and even though there was like blood, I feel like some newer movies, like just like even like Marvel movies, I feel like almost glorify violence more than this film did, but they just aren't as gory because while as this film, everything, like there was always repercussions to the actions, and there was always a realness, whereas in other action movies, it's always just let's come in and beat up the bad guy and then everything's all good. But it's like this movie I feel like was really real in how it dealt with violence.
Yeah, I agree.
It tells a good story too, so. All right, guys. Well, this has been Cinema Sit Down. Thank you so much for tuning in.